So welcome to the call number 11 for the VIVO Apps and Tools Working Group. And just a couple of quick notes here. The wiki page and the post call replay will be posted on the DuraSpace wiki at the link in the Google Doc. And also, the Google Doc is open for anyone to edit, and I'm going to paste a link in the chat. And if you're an attendee, if you could put yourself up in the attendees list, that'd be great. So for the past couple of months, or actually longer, I've been hearing some fantastic stuff about the work that LASP is doing out at Colorado with Don and Michael. And I've been trying to get them to be on a call, and they graciously agreed to be on last call, and I double booked the call. So I just want to apologize to them, to everybody, in front of everybody, and say that I really appreciate their graciously agreeing to come on the next call and do the demo that they were prepared to give last week. So with that,
that's no problem at all.
With that, they're going to show us how they use VIVO in some pretty cool ways to handle data, and also hopefully they'll be able to talk a little bit about the AngularJS web apps they're using to interact with it. So, Mick, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Alrighty.
There we go.
Well, for those of you who haven't heard my voice before, my name is Michael Cox. I go by Mick. I work at LASP. I'm a student under Don Ellsborg, and we've been trying to put together a little bit of a metadata repository here to keep track of pretty much any information that we can get our hands on. Can everybody see the screen here? I've got the VIVO splash page over here, and
I can see it. Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is basically our fresh VIVO install. It's pretty straightforward. We've added a few ontologies. Let me go ahead and show you that list. The most important one that we added is this ontology called VSTO, Virtual Solar Terrestrial Observatory, I believe is what that stands for. Basically, this is an ontology that allows us to input information about the missions that we have, the spacecraft that we have, some of the instruments that are on those spacecraft, and so that we can kind of start looking at that in a linked semantic way. So we've imported that one, and you can see some of those objects here, where our platforms here are individual spacecraft that we are involved in somehow. One example is Source. I'll use this example most of the day. We've got a description in here for Source, things like that. The deployment, so we could deploy the spacecraft more than one time, and then the instruments that it carries on each individual deployment. So that's basically what VSTO gets us. And then one of the applications that we wanted to build out of that is to replace this website that we have here. This is live. It's publicly available. The idea behind this website is that people can use it to view solar irradiance data. So that's basically how much power the sun's putting out over time. So right now you can see we have information from these various spacecraft, Source being one of them. And as you can see, they have a description here as well. This is all hard-coded stuff, and then the data sets that are collected by instruments on Source. And this, again, is all hard-coded for each of these instruments here. This is an external page. Each of these instruments, I'll use Source as the example again, also has a LASP page. Pull that up quickly. With a lot of the same exact metadata, so we've got that same description that we've seen now in 3 different places. Things about instruments. I think this is a list. Sure. Hard-coded tables, things like that. So these websites are all really great in and of themselves, but if we had some sort of change in data that we wanted to perpetrate across these various websites, that's not going to happen right now. People are going to have to enter it 2 or 3 times, and they might do it right or they might not. So that's one of the things that we want to try and solve with our metadata repository. So you mentioned, Chris, you mentioned AngularJS. One of the first things that we built in AngularJS was this website. This is now an Angular site that I developed to replace the lizard page that we have live currently. So this is what we tried to keep it looking exactly the same, but we wanted to populate some of this data dynamically. So for example, under this source missions page, I went ahead and wrote in, and this is heavily under development, so this changes quite a bit every day, but the general idea is that now this is being pulled dynamically out of VIVO, and to do that we're using just a Fuzeki endpoint in the back, using a GET request, HTTP GET, to go ahead and pull all that mission description information, as well as the principal investigator on this spacecraft, the instruments that it carries, and again that's all through the VSTL ontology here in the Sparkle query that we give it. And then for each of the instruments, go ahead and list any data set that was collected on that instrument. So for instance, the TIM, this data set that we have listed as the TIM data set, obviously came from this TIM irradiance thing. Now for the time being, these links run back to the VIVO pages for this, but we don't really have any long-term plans to expose the VIVO front end to users. So we're trying to develop, again, some of these AngularJS apps that are very specialized and can put in information where we want them to, and things like that, so that users can maybe be a little bit more familiar with this and not have to touch the VIVO interface, because to a lot of people, you know, this stuff would be a little bit intimidating. So this is one of the first things that we did. Again, these are all that. Sorry, that's the old one. Let me pull up mine. These are all being populated dynamically. Another interesting facet about this website is that I've built it in an almost RESTful way, in that the way that we're building this page is we're actually looking at the last entry here of the URL, and then we're inputting that into the Sparkle query so that it runs a Sparkle query, does some regex work, and looks for a mission in our database called SME. And when it finds it, it goes ahead and puts it in. So basically, these links just build those URLs for you. You can also do stuff like put in a different mission, for instance, that's not one that we would actually show on the Irradiance data center, but this is just kind of a proof of concept that it can get any instrument from there. And then if we put in something that doesn't exist, it'll return that that's not actually a mission that we have. So that's kind of our use case for these data sets. The other thing that we would like to do in the data set realm is to display, this is an example of looking at an actual data set. This is basically how much power the sun's putting out over time. And on the live version, we can see, go ahead and pull that up for you. So on the live version, it's basically the same thing. You have some download links, but then you've got this about page. And again, this is something that we want to completely overhaul in a dynamic way. All of this information here is hard-coded again, same thing as units, time range, update schedule. A lot of this stuff is stuff that we're going to want to have for every data set that we have. And so we figured we should go ahead and we're working right now on developing an ontology to start holding some of this data set information. We've got a weekly working group on that. Patrick West from RPI has been in to help us out, as well as a few other people, and we're currently in development on that, so that hopefully we can make this all dynamic. As a proof of concept, this is basically the same page with a different plotting tool, and all of these are being pulled dynamically here. So that's kind of the one of the biggest use cases that we have, is trying to set up this website so that people can see this dynamically. And then, for instance, we would want to also give people the option for the mission pages here themselves of pulling this information from our repository as well, so that instead of updating it here, if a new instrument shows up or something like that, or if the description changes, people could just edit it one time in our repository, and then it would show up everywhere that the description would show up, which would save a lot of people a lot of time and effort. And then the second use case that we have is actually just, it's really, really simple. It's just a skills database. We wanted just a way to keep track of what skills people have throughout the laboratory. And so I went ahead and whipped this up as a prototype for something that we could use VIVO to serve. and that's actually been working pretty well, and has gone live as of a couple weeks ago on our within our lab. So this basically all it does is it's linking a person's name with a skill. And to show that to you a little bit more graphically, this is again another Angular JS app so everything on this side was a Sparkle query against our Fuzeki endpoint to get all the FOV people in our database. And then over here, you have the same thing for our ontology skills, so skill objects in our database. And then the idea being, this is an AngularJS feature here, that you could say, I'm really good at barbecuing, for instance. And then it'll give you an option for for levels here. Now the skills ontology is pretty simple. The only thing we have are a skills class as well as these four skill level objects, and we use these level objects as kind of relationship objects in a similar way that VIVO uses roles. I don't know if who's familiar with those, but it's basically an intermediary object where it has a link to the person, to the skill, and to the proficiency level, essentially. So if we go ahead and tell it I'm a barbecue guru and submit it. One thing to note, since this is obviously an apps group, is what it's actually doing here. We released this before Vivo 1.6 came out, and so it didn't have a really good interface for systematically entering single triples at a time. So what we did here was when you click the submit button, actually what's happening is we have a PHP script that's creating a CSV file with that triple, and then we're calling the harvester on that file to go ahead and put it into the VIVO database. So if we're lucky, we can go back to view all skills, go ahead and search for my name, and you can see here that I'm a barbecue guru now. And we can go ahead and delete that out of there. The other thing one of the nice things that AngularJS gets you here is that, refresh that page. Basically, the way this page is built is we're using AngularJS, we're using an MVC model view controller type way of looking at this. The model is basically the triple store and everything that we have in there. The very first step being that we run a Sparkle query that gets essentially all of these rows. So that gets that, and then the controller formats them in a way that we like. And then the view is where AngularJS does a lot of its magic in that. So this basically we got this whole table as a list of JSON, and then we're doing certain interesting things like parsing together phone numbers and making these links and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty simple. And then the AngularJS allows you to do some really nice searching stuff. So if I was looking for my name, it can search on name. It'll search on skills too if I'm looking for people who know Java. Or if I was looking for, let's see if we have, yeah. So somebody for like Unix, for instance, skill throughout the lab. If we have Unix and we also want to search only for people within mission operations and data systems that know Unix rather than bugging one of our administrators about his Unix skill, it'll search across, whatever rows you want, and it'll do that kind of thing too. We have ordering here. That's another pretty simple thing that AngularJS you can add on, and then some pagination stuff, rows, all that kind of thing. So that's basically our skills app. And right now, those are the two big apps that we've been using VIVO to power. And most of the development, this one is pretty stable. We've been using this one for a while, and then this Lizard, the dataset serving website, is really what we're excited about trying to develop further. That's basically what I have. Chris, are there any questions from you or anybody else that I can help answer?
I have a bunch of questions, but before I start asking, does anybody out there in the audience have any questions for Mick? Fine, I'll go ahead and ask my questions then. So, what made you pick Angular to work with it? I mean, there's a lot of different MVC frameworks out there. Could you give us some kind of insight into your thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. So Angular, I can't remember who suggested Angular first, but we were presented with Angular because it's very dynamic, and it's very simple. And given those two things, I like both of those words a lot. And so I started looking into it, and it seems to fit our needs very well. Um, a lot of the, I wish I had, let's see, where would I get that? Let's pull up. Well, that's probably not worth getting, but the source code for these pages, for instance, or even a simpler page like this. So on this map new skill, with the model that Angular gives, I have it showing, basically building these divs based on the information that it receives. The drag and drop feature is something that we added, but then it also, things like this become incredibly simple with AngularJS. So dynamic dropdowns, these are dynamic options, in that so one of the coolest features in Angular is something that they call an ng repeat. It's a directive they have in HTML where you can put a line, for example, a div, and call it, say this bar, if that bar is a div, and then go ahead and insert things from your controller into that. And for each instance of an object in a controller that it finds, so in this case, for every row that it would find in the Sparkle query, it'll repeat that div, for instance. I'm doing the same thing here with dropdowns. So one of the select options, and it's dynamically populating both the what you see here from the RDFS label, as well as what would be sent to the harvester, which is the URI of these things, and that's all being done dynamically. And the code, the HTML for this whole page, which is a very dynamic page, the JavaScript is probably maybe 50 lines tops, and it's very readable. It's very simple to read, and again, I'm a part-time student working here, and we have one other part-time student on the team as well. And he and I were able to put this together after not knowing Angular in maybe about a week. Most of the prototype was done, so it's very simple.
How did you find the experience of doing the? I'm assuming that when you call Fuseki, you're asking it to give you back JSON. And how did you find that working with JSON and binding that to Angular? Was that hard or easy?
It was incredibly simple. Angular has well, yeah, simple is the right answer. Yeah, we're getting JSON out of the Fuseki endpoint, just like you said, and Angular has a lot of tools for reading in JSON from various formats, and so that integration was something that was pretty much trivial.
So you said that you're using the harvester right now. You've got some kind of back end process that you're dropping. So when you guys get to 1.6, what do you see? What do you see changing? What are you going to do?
So with 1.6, there's basically the update API that was released. And I haven't looked at it too much, but looking at it briefly, it looks like that's going to be a way better tool for inputting basically small numbers of triples. So if, for instance, we have a person that has, 8 of these skills, this would, right now, the way we're working, this would build a CSV file with 8 lines and call the harvester on it and all this stuff. There's a lot of overhead associated with that. So with VIVO 1.6, we're hoping that instead of writing a CSV file and then calling the harvester and do the inferencing on everything, basically, is my understanding of how that's running, is that we'd be able to hit their update API and basically talk directly from our Angular web app to the VIVO backend rather than doing all this server side magic.
Yes, that is. I think that's a big hope here too for other apps that we have. So another question I have for you is: have you shared any of this code yet? I saw you go into GitHub for a second. Is there any of these examples out there for other people to look at?
Um, you know, they have not been yet. What I can do, I'll go ahead and make my GitHub repo public. Let's see if I can.
Because I think a lot of people would love to look at your Angular. I mean, you could do the Angular
Absolutely,
tutorial and then look at your example for working with Vivo, and that would be pretty amazing.
absolutely. Yeah, so this is me. If you all, I can go ahead and copy this and paste it in chat as well.
Yeah, if you paste it in the chat, I'll put it in the notes.
Drop it there. Perfect. And I'll go ahead and make that public for people to look at. But it's another thing I guess I could mention while we're in here looking is that AngularJS has a really great testing framework as well. So a lot of what we were trying to do was test-driven development on the skills app. So basically, we've got not only do we have the Angular code, but we also have tests written such that when we're developing things, we've set up. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Grunt or Yeoman, these tools, but some of the Grunt, for instance, will run a server based on your AngularJS code that you have, and then it'll look at your testing directory, and anytime you change an interesting file within your app, so if you change something on the controller layer or something on the view layer, this grunt server will actually rerun your tests and let you know whether or not the code you just changed makes any of your tests fail. So for instance, the Angular JS search box by default would only do exact matches, so I would have to search for Cox, Michael to get my list. That's not superhuman helpful, so I wanted to add something, if you type Michael Cox without that it would still, right, do these things. And so for us, it was super simple to go into our testing directory, write an easy test for that, and then develop using Grunt that's running the test continuously as you're writing code and saving files. And then you write the code, and eventually your tests pass, and then you know that basically you can promote that to production. So that's kind of a side note that Angular also offers a lot of really great testing features.
That's interesting. So when I did the Angular tutorial back over the summer, they were using Karma or something like that. Did they rename it?
Yeah, so Karma is run by the Grunt server.
Okay.
Grunt is a tool, yeah, that does a lot of things, including running a Karma test server.
Very cool. So yeah, so we found Angular to be pretty fantastic as well. It's kind of surprising about how much you can do with. He's not kidding when he says you can do a lot with 50 lines of code. So and then it's lightweight, so it's JavaScript, so it's included, and it's a lot of that stuff is running client side, so it's not a lot of overhead on your server either, right?
Exactly, yeah. We're running actually everything you see here, including this VM, or including this heavy web app, is running on a small VM that we have that's got a little bit of dedicated hardware to it, but it's by no means heavy. By far the heaviest thing that we've got going is the VIVO web app. I should mention that one thing we're doing a little differently here is we're using Glassfish rather than Tomcat as a container, and that's really, I mean, that's the most memory intensive or resource intensive thing that we have going for us. Um, these apps, this skills app is completely featherweight, and Lizard is pretty lightweight as well.
Have you thought about so I saw that data visualization. Have you thought about doing any of the JavaScript lightweight visualization like with D3 or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have this one. Let's see where that is. Yeah, this one is a tool called HighCharts. This is something that we really like. It's free to people who are using it non-commercially, is my understanding. But this is a nice tool with, and we're pulling in JSON here, not through our Fuzeki endpoint, just because we don't actually want to keep any of the data in our Vivo triple store. We just want to keep metadata about it.
Okay.
And then eventually the metadata will point you to this page where you can access it, things like that. But HighCharts is a tool that we've been using across the lab. We do a lot of interesting, slidey things and clicks and drags and changing.
And that's
all
all
this kind
powered
of stuff.
by JSON behind it?
Yep, yeah. So this is all a big list of JSON points here, just a time series, and then HighCharts does all the visualization stuff off of that.
That's pretty cool. So where are you storing that your scientific data?
Yeah. So for our production website, we've got this tool called Lattice, and this to give you all an idea that aren't in a science heavy domain. A lot of people, this is by far the best looking data access site I've ever seen. We've got this really nice API here specifically for these irradiance data sets.
Oh, cool.
So you can see here, this is mission and what file, dot, format, and then a few parameters, things like that. So we're actually serving it through this tool that knows how to go get it from the real database or in flat files. So that's basically how Lizard is done. But a lot of data sets that we have across the lab are actually just sitting flat files somewhere that the scientists who use them know how to get to, and that's the end of it. And that's a lot of the big problem that we're trying to solve here is that, for instance, if somebody from JPL or any other science institute across the world is trying to find um, data sets that we actually have information about, there's no way they're going to be able to do that
Right.
without a tool like this.
And you're trying, so Vivo's in part trying to help curate the metadata to at least give you an idea of where the data sets, who to call about the data sets, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I was looking at some of the, so this is public. So all this stuff is already out there in the public, right?
Yeah, so this is our this is just the Lizard site that we haven't touched yet. This is the hard-coded one that's
Oh,
public.
okay, gotcha.
Everything that we've done is still internal to the lab because we have, some sensitive information in here, I guess, about infrastructure and billing and things like that.
Okay.
Um, but and skills we wouldn't want to give to the public, I suppose. But yes, that is definitely in the long-term plan. What we think we're going to do for that is basically clone the entire VM that we have that's running this stack, our VIVO stack and the Lizard stack, and clone it out into the DMZ. And during that clone process, we could run some Sparkle constructs and deletes and things like that to go ahead and cherry pick out the stuff that we don't want to push to the DMZ, and then go ahead and make basically the rest of it public.
Cool. So I got a question here. I'm in a room full of people. One of the questions I got were the data files stored in Vivo. I think the answer is no. They're storing those in different locations. That was a
Yeah,
good.
that's correct.
That
That's
Lizard
correct. So let me actually walk you through an example using the VSTO ontology. If we go into that source spacecraft, so this is a source. This basically what I'm getting at here is that we don't want to store the data files in Vivo. We just basically want to give you a thread or a hook or something like that to allow you to go discover it. So the deployment down to an instrument, we'll go to Tim. I know that has a data set. This data set, and each of these has a script. This is all from the VSTO ontology, by the way. Parameters that it contains. A lot of this is going to get reworked. That's what we're doing right now because VSTO at the low level isn't excellent. But then we go down to data products, and at some level, a data set or a data product will always have this URI
Oh, cool.
that you'll be able to go find. And so this is actually where it kind of sits for real. We
Wow. How
can.
long did you guys curate all that information by hand?
You mean the data set information?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's pretty spectacular that you just walked us through that all the way to the data set. But how did you get all that data into the VSTO ontology?
Yeah, so that much was done by me by hand last summer, and that was a week or something. But again, it's a really small data set. What we're working on now is creating an ontology that's going to be more general than just solar irradiance data, and hopefully be able to ingest something programmatically. And again, a lot of the data is in weird places, in weird formats that only certain scientists that are in the know are able to access. And so we're hoping that not only are we going to build this nice, simple, generic backend ontology to hold it, but we're also going to try and present this website here as a use case. Sorry, our version. This website as a use case for scientists to say, hey, if you're willing to come to this form, this app that I've built, and enter some of your metadata in about your data, you'll be able to see things like this, and it'll be publicly discoverable and things like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, what do you think the likelihood of getting that kind of adoption from the scientists is?
That's a pretty good question. We have a huge range here, from very progressive to people who really just don't care. They've got 2 lines in IDL that work fine, so why would they change, kind of thing.
Right.
But I think that, so another thing that we're trying to do, actually, that you mentioned that, and this one might not have a good example. Yeah. Some of our data sets, we're trying to link data sets in with publications as well. So for instance, on the Lizard website, if you run to one of these pages, it'll have information about how to cite this data set or references that are made here.
Oh,
And so
cool.
what we're hoping is that once we have a way of linking data sets to publications, that that's kind of going to, I don't have a better way to describe it other than the vanity effect, right? That people can start putting their name on their data sets, and now everybody knows that it's coming from them, essentially. And so I think that that carries a lot of weight in the scientific community. So I think that we have a pretty good shot of getting at least, half or 75% of the scientists on board. And then hopefully it'll be a simple process to convert the last few.
No, that's pretty amazing. Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of people that are happy that we're able to combine grants data and publications in the same kind of in either a visualization or the same profile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Well, has anybody thought of any more questions for Mick here since we got him on the hot seat?
It's like it's running local JavaScript. Has he seen any version issues since local Java clients tend to vary greatly?
So the question I have is, since it's a JavaScript-based application, have you seen any problems with the clients with different versions of JavaScript, or any of you have you tested against different types of browsers, or what is
Yeah, that's
that?
a good question. That's a good question. So again, what I mentioned with the testing that we have here, we basically with our Grunt and Karma, we're able to pull up a Chrome and a Firefox and an Internet Explorer browser. Actually, we don't test Internet Explorer because we hope that people aren't using that anymore. But we pull up various versions of browsers and run our tests in all of them. So when we're coding, basically, we're trying to get as much coverage as possible. Right now, we know that the big browsers being used in our lab are Firefox and Chrome, and so our heaviest testing are done in those two browsers. And basically, I think we're eventually just going to say that those are the two browsers that we support. But again, since it's browser specific, then that means that we're fine across operating systems and things like that. So that's a nice feature at least.
No, it's pretty cool. That must be like another check mark in the why to use Angular, since it does. I forgot it provides that end-to-end testing with different browser objects.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And it's a really great. Sorry to interrupt you there, but it's I mean the testing in and of itself is almost enough justification to pick Angular JS. If I have so when I do most of my development work, I'm doing it in a Linux VM just because it's easy to move stuff around. But what I do there is I've got Aptana, which is an Eclipse plugin running, and then in the console down at the bottom, I go ahead and start up my Angular JS Grunt Karma test server, and then it's set up to automatically watch the files that I'm working on, so that when I'm coding, make a line, hit save, and then I see the console output directly. It runs the end-to-end test in the background for me, and then it outputs the results of the test right below it. So it's this really great workflow for kind of a test and then development, right? A test-driven development type framework that we have here.
yeah. Just another plug from me about Angular. If you guys haven't seen it, they have a really great tutorial that's like literally a step-by-step walkthrough of how to use all these tools. And there you go, Mick. Yeah. So under Learn up there at the top, you'll see they have a tutorial with step-by-step, and you build a web app that is a phone catalog, which does, and it teaches you how to use some of those really cool search features like Mick was showing us. But yeah, I was pretty impressed too with the testing.
Yeah, the testing is really great. And another, I mean, this is now just turning into rah-rah Angular, but keep in mind that I'm a half-time student, and I put together this prototype in less than a week.
Wow.
And I had never heard of AngularJS. I've done very, very little JavaScript development before this app, so it's pretty easy to implement.
Well, very cool. Well, hey, is are you and Don coming to the implementation fest?
In Duke,
Yeah.
I'd love to. Generally, the lab doesn't send undergrad students to things like that, but I'm gonna try my hardest.
You should tell him to make an exception in your case.
All righty, will do.
Say that the working group chair said that you should come to the implementation fest.
All right, thanks, Chris. Hey, thanks for letting me kind of get our stuff out there and get some feedback as
No,
well.
I
It's
appreciate
always
it.
nice.
I'm gonna ping you back in like 6 months or so and see how far you guys. Because I bet you're gonna build a lot of other really interesting stuff.
Yeah, we're hoping so. Look forward to it.
Well, thanks.
Absolutely.
Unless there's any questions, no questions. All right, I'm stealing the presenter back from you, buddy.
Sounds good.
Show my screen. All right, so as usual in the Google Doc, which you can see here, which I've pasted the link. It's in the chat. Nicholas was kind of take some notes. Definitely check out Mick's example on his GitHub site, which we pasted the link for. All right, so the only other agenda item that I have is to talk a little bit about the hackathon. So it's official. The implementation fest has been announced on the vivo.org, vivoweb.org website. And so there's a link in the notes. But just to kind of go over something real quick here, the schedule right now is Tuesday, March 18th, from 9 to 5 is the hackathon. And then the implementation fest itself starts officially on Wednesday and ends on Friday with some ontology working group sessions. So as far as the hackathon goes, right now we're planning on having some information set up. I've been working with Nicholas Rejak and John Corson Reichert. One of the things that we're hoping to have done, hopefully in time for the implementation fest, is an updated ontology diagram. I'd like to be able to have a poster-sized one printed up on the wall when we're doing the hackathon. I think it will be beneficial. Also, thanks to Ted Lawless and his Vagrant work, I believe we'll have some Vagrant virtual machines with VIVO already running and a Fuseki endpoint so that people could whip together an app just like Mick showed us. And I think that with frameworks like AngularJS and some of the other frameworks that are out there, I think that if we give people some of the tools and a prelim data set where they don't have to waste time setting that up, I think we might be able to see some interesting things hacked together. I'm really interested in looking at faceted search. If you missed Patrick West's demo 2 weeks ago, it's up on YouTube, but he did some really neat examples of a faceted search, whose name is escaping me at this point. I don't know if you remember it. So those are in last week's notes. Right now, NCAR, right? Yeah. NCAR. So right now, the basic hackathon themes: faceted search, visualization, biosketch generation. Which actually we have a working example here. I'm hoping to get Mike Conlon on in a couple of weeks to show. He wrote a biosketch and CV generator in Python, and it uses some formatting, I think, from D3. But it looks pretty good and it runs really fast. He was able to take the CV generation for his CV, which took about 15 minutes to never with the DV Docs plugin, to it runs in under 2 minutes. Most profiles ran in seconds, some of the smaller profiles. So, but we may expand on that. One of the things that I thought would be interesting from a hacking standpoint would be to give people the ability to spawn that off to their Google Docs or Dropbox. So a button within a VIVO template that just lets them deposit it somewhere else. I've seen that in a couple of mashed up web apps, and I thought that was like a really useful feature because a lot of people are using that. Plus, it's kind of a just-in-time thing. Usually, I don't really care about my CV or BioSketch until someone is yelling at me that I need it for a grant, and then I got to go edit it and update it. So I can see people doing that over and over again. Open social widgets. I'm hoping to have the guys from UCSF at the hackathon. They're going to show us some of their work, and I'm hoping that we can. I'm pretty interested to see, because I think the guys at Duke had done some work with them as well, and have some pretty cool widgets. Vivo dashboards, Vivo mobile. Those are kind of the big themes. If anybody has any themes or thoughts or suggestions for the hackathon, I know I was supposed to work with Paul at Weil to put together a survey, and just it's my fault I haven't gotten around to doing that. So I haven't surveyed anybody. but I don't want to exclude anybody. So if you know of any ideas or anyone else has any ideas that you want to share with me privately instead of on the call, I'm happy to just shoot me an email. Well, that's about all I've got today, unless anybody's got any other items they'd like to discuss for apps and tools.
Chris, do you think the code you're talking about for the CV generation will be available for others to take a look at before the implementation fest?
Yes, I'm going to twist Mike's arm and make him put it up on GitHub this week.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in looking through that.
Yeah, it's not a matter of not wanting to share. It's just a matter of we have an internal Git repo system, and Mike works out of there, and so um, we give him a hand when he needs to go put stuff up on GitHub. So a lot of this stuff we've been developing internally to kind of fix some of the broken things that we have with our implementation. But yeah, I'll get him to get that out there. All in Python.
Great.
Again, thank you to Mick Cox in Colorado. And Mick, if Don wasn't on the call, can you just thank Don for letting us have you?
I'll do that. He's stuck in a staff meeting that he was trying to get out of, but it looks like he couldn't quite escape.
Well, tell him that in about 2 hours it'll be up on YouTube so he can watch how fantastic you were.
I'll let him know. Thanks. Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And the next call will be in 2 weeks, which will be the 18th of February.
Okay, bye.